Good day, everyone. Our topic for today is about effective communication. Why are communication skills important? Communication skills are the key to developing friendships and to building a strong social support network. They also help you take care of your own needs while being respectful of the needs of others. People aren't born with good communication skills like any other skill. They are learned through trial and error and repeated practice. Three areas of communication. The first one, nonverbal communication. Second, conversation skills. Third, assertiveness. Nonverbal communication. A large part of what we communicate to each other is nonverbal. What you say to people with your eyes or your body language is just as powerful as what you say with words. When you feel anxious, you might behave in ways that are designed to avoid communicating with others. In nonverbal communication, it is more on actions speak louder than words. Because while you are presenting any actions or body movement in front of the person who is talking, like you are looking around the place, meaning you have no interest on what he or she said about something. Steps that can help you get started in identifying any deficits and improving your nonverbal skills. Step 1. Identifying your trouble spots. To get started, ask yourself a few questions. Do I have a trouble maintaining eye contact when talking with others? Do I smile too much because of nervousness? Too little? Do I slouch? Do I keep my head down? Do I speak with a timid voice? Do I speak too quickly when I am anxious? Do I cross my arms and legs? Some of the nonverbal behaviors you may want to pay attention to are posture, head up and alert leaning forward, movement and gesture, keeping arms uncrossed, physical distance, standing closer when talking to others, eye contact, making appropriate eye contact when talking, facial expression, smiling warmly, volume of voice, speaking at a volume easily heard, tone of voice, speaking with a confident tone. Step 2. Experiment with and practice nonverbal skills. Try to practice only one skill at a time, so you can make sure you have mastered it before moving on to the next skill. You may want to ask a trusted friend or relative to give you some feedback on your nonverbal behavior. This feedback can be very useful, as we often do not really know how we appear to others. If you are able to, it may be useful to videotape yourself having a conversation and note what your body language may be communicating. Once you have identified a couple of trouble spots, practice the appropriate body language. You can also practice your new nonverbal skills in front of a mirror. Once you have gained a little confidence and practice using nonverbal communication skills at home, try it out in real interactions. It is a good idea to start small by talking to clerks, tellers, and cashiers at stores, for example. Try increasing the amount of eye contact you make when talking with others. Smile more and pay attention to the reactions of others. For example, is the bank teller friendlier or more chatty when you give her more eye contact and smile more? Conversation skills. One of the biggest challenges for someone with social anxiety is starting conversation and keeping them going. It is normal to struggle a bit when you are trying to make small talk, because it is not always easy to think of things to say. This is especially true when feeling anxious. On the other hand, some anxious people talk too much, which can have a negative impression on others. And because of the anxiety of many people, it will hard for them to start the conversation, or sometimes they are too shy to chit-chat with others, especially to strangers. And here are some tips in conversation skills. The first, tips for starting a conversation. Start a conversation by saying something general and not too personal. For example, Talk about the weather. Gorgeous day, isn't it? Pay a compliment. That sweater looked great on you. Make an observation. I noticed that you were reading a book on sailing. Do you have a boat? Or introduce yourself. I don't think we have met. Then said your name. Second, you don't need to say anything extremely witty. It's better to be sincere and genuine. Third, once you have talked for a while, especially if you have known the person for some time, it might be appropriate to move on to more personal topics. For example, relationships, family matters, personal feelings, spiritual beliefs, etc. Remember to pay attention to your nonverbal behavior, make eye contact, and speak loudly enough that others can hear you. And now, tips for keeping a conversation going. First, remember that a conversation is a two-way street. Don't talk too little or too much. As much as possible, try to contribute to about one half of the conversation when speaking one-on-one. Disclose some personal information about yourself, such as your weekend activities, your favorite hockey team, or a hobby or interest. Personal information does not need to be too personal. You can start with giving your opinion about movies and books, or talking about things that you like doing. Try to show a little vulnerability. It can even be okay to admit that you are a bit nervous. For example, I never know what to say to break the ice, or I'm always so nervous at parties where I hardly know anyone. However, take care. Sometimes disclosing too much too soon can put others off. Ask questions about the other person, but when you are first getting to know someone, take care not to ask questions that are too personal. Appropriate questions might be to ask about their weekend's activity, their preferences, or their opinion about something you said. For example, how do you like that new restaurant? Try to ask open-ended questions rather than close-ended questions. A close-ended question is one that is answered by a few words, such as a yes or a no. For example, do you like your job? In contrast, an open-ended question elicits much more detail. For example, how did you get into your line of work? Do I talk too much when I'm nervous? And lastly, tips for ending a conversation. Remember, all conversations end sometime. Don't feel rejected or become anxious as a conversation nears its end. Running out of things to talk about doesn't mean you are a failure or that you are boring. Think of a graceful way to end the conversation. For example, you can say that you need to refill your drink, catch up with another person at a party, get back to work, or you can promise to continue the conversation at a later time or date. For example, hope we'll have a chance to chat again, or let's have lunch together soon. Something like that. In ending a conversation, you don't just leave behind your acquaintance or your friend. You need to say something before leaving, and you need your excuse to end the conversation. Below are a few suggestions for some practice situations. Speak to a stranger, for example, at a bus stop, in an elevator, or waiting in line. It's also starting to speak to stranger is by asking some random stops, like for example, where can I buy buko pie, or ask them if they know some spots in their local province or city. Talk to your neighbors, for example, about the weather or something going on in the neighborhood, or joining in the group of gossip makers. Interact with coworkers. For example, chat with coworkers on your coffee break or in the staff room at lunch. Have friends over for a get-together. For example, invite a coworker or acquaintance over. Meet someone for coffee or throw a birthday party for a relative, make sure you interact with your guests. Try giving a compliment. Resolve to give at least 2 compliments each day, preferably ones that you would not normally give, but remember to always be sincere. Only pay a compliment to someone if you truly believe what you are saying. For example, you see your friend at the hallway. Just say, "You are blooming today," or "You look so happy today." Assertiveness. Assertive communication is the honest expression of one's own needs, wants, and feelings, while respecting those of the other person. When you communicate assertively, your manner is non-threatening and non-judgmental, and you take responsibility for your own actions. If you are socially anxious, you may have some difficulty expressing your thoughts and feelings openly. Assertiveness skills can be difficult to learn, especially since being assertive can mean holding yourself back from the way you would normally do things. For example, you may be afraid of conflict, always go along with the crowd, and avoid offering your opinions, and as a result have developed a passive communication style. Alternatively, you may aim to control and dominate others and have developed an aggressive communication style. However, an assertive communication style brings many benefits. For example, it can help you to relate to others more genuinely, with less anxiety and resentment. It also gives you more control over your life and reduces feelings of helplessness. Furthermore, it allows other people the right to live their lives. Prosocial behavior, altruism, behavior that is motivated by an unselfish concern for the welfare of others. In this, you are motivated to help others if they need one. Heroism, actions that involve courageous risk-taking to obtain a social valued goal. An example would be a dangerous act undertaken to save the life of a stranger. Diffusion of responsibility, the idea that the amount of responsibility assumed by bystanders in an emergency is shared among them, rather than increasing the odds that prosocial behavior will occur. Having multiple bystanders decreases the odds, rather than apathy. A large number of witnesses experience diffusion of responsibility. In this diffusion of responsibility, all bystanders will divide themselves where they can help the someone in need. Bystander effect, the fact that the likelihood of a social response to an emergency is affected by the number of bystanders who are present. In this, if one of the bystander is do the act of helping, the others will do the same. Implicit bystanders effect, the decrease in helping behavior brought about by simply thinking about being in a group. In this, the bystanders waiting to each other who the first one to help. In short, they are waiting for nothing. Some like that. 5 steps that determine helping, Latane and Darley, 1970. Noticing or failing to notice that something unusual is happening. Correctly interpreting an event as an emergency. Deciding that it is your responsibility to help. Deciding that you have the needed skills, knowledge. Making the final decision to provide help. Pluralistic ignorance, the tendency of bystanders in an emergency to rely on what other bystanders do and say, even though none of them is sure about what is happening or what to do about it. Very often, all of the bystanders hold back and behave as if there is no problem. Each individual uses this information to justify the failure to act. In short, they don't want to help because they have lack of information about the situation. Situational factors that affect helping. Helping those you like, helping those who mimic us, helping those who are not responsible for their problem. Exposure to prosocial models increases prosocial behavior. Intercultural communication. Why is it important to have understanding between different cultures? First, to understand people behavior. To prevent the misunderstanding, to respect the differences between cultures, and to communicate the right message to the right people. Communication. Communication is the vehicle by which meanings are conveyed, identity is composed and reinforced, and feelings are expressed. As we communicate using different cultural habits and meaning systems, both conflict and harmony are possible outcomes of any interaction. Intercultural communication, interpersonal interaction between members of different groups which differ from each other in respect of knowledge shared by their members and in respect of their linguistic forms of symbolic behavior. Intercultural communication is communication between different cultures with respect to each other. High context and low context. Edward T. Hall is a cultural anthropologist in Columbia University, best known for his work in intercultural relation and communication. One of the founders of intercultural communication study. As you can see, the Hall's theory, high context and low context. In high context, there are convert message, internalized messages, extensive nonverbal codes, reaction reserve, distinct in and out groups, strong interpersonal bonds, high commitment, open time. In low content, overt messages, plainly coded messages, details verbalized, reaction on surface, flexible in and out groups, weak interpersonal bonds, low commitment, close time. High and low context. High context cultures, verbal messages have little meaning without the surrounding context, which includes the overall relationship between all the people engaged in communication. Low context cultures exclude many of those stimuli and focus more intensely on the object communication event. The message itself means everything. In high context, you need a deeper understanding before you can get the message, while in low context, it is easy to understand and even you are not familiar, you can get the message. Direct indirect communication. Direct communication is when the meaning of the message is communicated mainly via words. Indirect communication is when meaning is not only in the words, but mainly in the surrounding context of a conversation.